Studies suggest that ESG assets may very well cross $50 trillion by 2025. Companies across the world are paying attention to this wave and putting new processes in place to become compliant with these new standards. So what do these adjustments look like? And what does it take to become an ESG compliant company? We've just heard from Gautam Adani, chair of Adani Group. Now, to discuss these issues more deeply, really pleased to be joined virtually by the Group CEO of Surbana Jurong, Wong, the Managing Director and CEO of Invest India, Deepak Bagla, Group Head, Sustainability and Climate Change at the Adani Group, Professor Arun Sharma, and Senior Vice President, Industry Head of Financial Services and Public Sector at Infosys, Ajay. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining India Global Forum. Let's start off with you, Deepak. Tell me, do you think that ESG and compliance will play a big role in how global investors look at investments into companies? And do you think most Indian businesses will adjust quickly to match these global ESG standards?
Edie, I think it's no longer a question. And especially what we are going through with this pandemic and this virus, this is something which is right there in the middle of the room. But quite frankly, I think ESG is something which is very focused and critical where India is concerned. Our Prime Minister Modi had specifically mentioned that both growth and ESG are equally important. And there is a huge stress from the government itself to ensure that we work across the ESG standards. Let me put a few thoughts in mind for you. One is we at Invest India, which is the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency. The first element which we are looking at is we've partnered with UNDP and have come up with a list of ESG approved kind of projects. And we work more and more with industry to try and create these projects and also to help them by creating templates as to what is required to make them ESG compliant. The second itself is we have a complete platform called the India Investment Grid, which will give you a set of opportunities which are available within the structure. But most importantly, let me bring it to you, Edie, and I know others are waiting, so I'll be brief, that one of the two very critical things which we are doing within Invest India itself, and that also reflects in what is happening in the country as a whole, is one is the big program on startup and innovation. And that is where I'm seeing a huge level of activity which is coming out in all the three elements of E, S, and G. And be it bringing more transparency into the system, be it bringing better hygiene and working conditions, or be it seeing that how we have the least impact on the environment and containing whatever is on the carbon footprint. And let me mention here that the world's largest renewable energy program was introduced by Prime Minister Modi, and that is currently underway where India is concerned. The second very interesting element, and which is again what we are focused on with an entire team, is waste to wealth. You see, one of the interesting things of a developing economy where resources are always constrained is recycling, and the best utilization of given resources is critical. And the moment you do that, you realize your footprint on your carbon footprint really reduces substantially. And that sets into place a momentum where there is a deep sense of awareness across all stakeholders of society on the elements related to ESG. Let me end with my comments here for the moment. I will pause and we will wait for my other colleagues on the panel, and I'll always be there to take it on later. Thank you, Edie. Back to you.
Thank you. I'll definitely be following up with you in a minute. Ajay, let's come to you. Infosys became carbon neutral for the fiscal year 2020. That's 30 years ahead of the timeline set by the Paris Agreement. We know that actually the science tells us we all have to move that back to 2030. What put Infosys in such a position to achieve these goals?
First of all, great to be here on the panel today, and thank you for inviting me. From an Infosys standpoint, we've been always focusing on corporate social responsibility as part of our core business strategy and ethos from the very beginning. And every year we used to contribute about 2% of profits to social programs. But our ESG journey, the backstory is exciting, but it's a bit serendipitous as well. At the start of the millennium, when we were building our campuses in India, the infrastructure in India was quite unreliable at that point in time. So we started investing hugely in solar farms and to counter to the inconsistent electricity supply. And that became the bedrock for the growth of our sustainability efforts. So from an Infosys environment standpoint, we are proud to say that we are carbon neutral across scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. And we have been on this journey for last 12 years. And across renewable energy, be it solar farms, wind farms, or waste and water management, looking at smart building using technology as one of the biggest lever. And if you visit our campuses, we call them living labs for clean technology. And we've done this without sort of buying carbon offsets and credits. So I think that's one part of the sustainability perspective. From a social perspective, if I look at, we've always thought our company's mission is around technology and education. And what Infosys Foundation is doing today is we are training 10 million people across the globe on digital skills through learning classes, gigantic technology platforms, and self-learning areas as well. And from a governance standpoint, we've always prided ourselves on the corporate governance and disclosures. We have a completely independent board with 25% women population on the board, independent chair, a very high level of disclosure that we do every year. And there is intense focus on empowerment of women in our workforce as a company. And also looking at LGBT and disabled, colleagues and underrepresented communities. So I think that's basically the framework of our ESG initiatives. And with this pandemic, we believe that there'll be a huge opportunity for us to give flexibility to women workers, we had a very high percentage of women workers from the beginning. We have about 38% as a company population, but we saw that middle and senior levels, there was dwindling effect of women population. So with this pandemic, we believe more flexibility, new ways of working will allow us to manage that ratio also. So that's basically the scorecard across environmental, social, and governance from an Infosys standpoint. Eddie, over to you.
Thank you. I'll come back to you as well. Professor Arun Sharma, how does a diversified conglomerate like Adani Group track its carbon footprint across your vast array of businesses? Do certain businesses help to offset more? How does it work?
Well, thank you, Eddie. It's a complex question. There are certain businesses in the group that have been doing emission reporting for a long time. Some of it is driven by regulatory requirements, and some of it has been because the group has been very proactive. I'm sure you heard from the chairman about the ambition to be the world's largest renewable energy company, and we are already on our way. The Adani Foundation is doing amazing work on empowerment of women and healthcare, and due to crisis, they've really done an excellent job. But the question that you are asking is, there are businesses in the group where it hasn't been the practice to undertake carbon footprint analysis. So we are undertaking a rigorous emission analysis and all the planet-related metrics for the entire portfolio of Adani Group companies. They will be rigorous, they will be benchmarked to the best global emission standards in their sectors, and that will help us understand where we stand compared to the rest of our peers globally. What that does is it sets an ambition for us. And the chairman has always said, ESG is not a box-ticking exercise, it is a transformation and culture change for the group. And what we are now looking at in the whole alphabet soup of ESG compliance, ecosystem, the TCFD, the Task Force on aligned to climate change, financial disclosure, is one of the more important things that we are looking at it, because it addresses the governance issues, it addresses the opportunities that climate change provides, and it addresses the risks that are there and what are the targets and KPIs that we have to set. So this is actually a work in progress across the entire group, which we are working with the groups to implement. Now, what happens there is that the TCFD compliance is actually somewhat challenging because we have to look at different scenarios, 2-degree scenarios, 1.5-degree scenarios, or well below 2-degree scenario. And that does make it very rigorous. And then we're also looking at setting science-based target initiative targets. And the post-business APSEZ and Adani Green Energy Limited have already committed. So we want to go in this direction on setting targets, monitor our progress, and then eventually look at the broader ESG. And this is a challenge for the entire global economy, because what is the meaning of ESG compliant? So for the lack of a standard, we believe that the World Economic Forum IBC metrics, which the Big Four have helped put, is a good start, the 21 metrics, and we will start sort of like, looking at how we address that. So there are some of the things that we are doing. There are 20 different kinds of businesses, and understanding the carbon footprint is our first priority, and then setting the goals to undertake emission reduction. And we can discuss more about what we are doing to reduce emissions too.
Let's come back to you to do that in just a moment. Wong Fine, you work in infrastructure and urban development, and earlier this year, Surbana Jurong issued the first sustainability-linked bond in Asia. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, thank you, Eddie, for inviting us to share a bit about our ESG efforts, in the 40 countries that we operate. One of these initiatives that we have started is to issue a sustainability-linked bond. It's not just the first Asian sustainability-linked bond, but it's also the first Singapore dollar bond. Yeah, and unlike the other bonds which are issued to fund green projects, our bond is not specifically to finance any projects, but to fund our future growth and also to refinance our existing credit lines. And a unique feature of this bond is a premium that we will pay is in terms of the structure at maturity. And the premium payment commits us to achieve certain UN SDG goals at the end of the bond, which is 2030. Yeah. And it's a clear, concrete and measurable KPIs that we have to meet. Yeah. And it ties in with our business strategy as well. Yeah. Another of our initiative that we have started with a local university is to see how we can harness and store and use the coal energy from regasification of the LNG. Our plan is to use this energy to power our housing units here in Singapore. So there are quite a number of initiatives that we've undertaken globally to try and pursue our ESG goals. Over to you, Eddie.
Thank you very much. Let's come back around. I'd like to go back to Deepak and talk about some of the ESG projects that you mentioned that you are working on with UNDP. Can you tell me about some of those that might be interesting to an international audience? Oh, I think you might be on mute.
Hi, Deep.
There's always one.
So I'm saying the world's largest solar-powered initiative is currently on in India. Let me just put it in perspective for you. The world's first, actually let me correct that, the world's only airport which is 100% run on solar power is in India. Some of the world's largest solar power parks are now in India or are being executed in India. When we talk of the Paris Accord, if you look at it, out of the G20, India is probably the only one in line on what those milestones were created. What I want to bring to your point here, Edie, it's not just projects, it's a mindset. ESG is an absolute mindset, and for economies like ours, which are based, and the strength of these economies is frugal innovation. The moment you work towards the element of frugal innovation, you're working towards an ESG. Let me give you another example. Me, myself, Invest India. It's like a startup of the government of India. It's runs totally under the aegis of the government. Look at gender equality here. we have more women than men. Actually, it's not really that equal in our organization itself.
Congratulations.
And what has been very interesting, Edie, I knew you would like that one, but I must also say that what has been very interesting when we talk about Industry 4.0 and the cohorts and everybody coming in, let me give you the example of the world's largest two-wheeler manufacturer in India. And ever since they started using cohorts, you've started seeing gender equality coming up in a major way, because now you have women being able to take on tasks which were earlier only to the men because of certain physical manual elements to them. So what I'm just trying to say here is that all elements of this, and let me also bring you one more. In a country like India, which is one of the most robust democracies of the world, and at the same point of time with a very high level of digitization, and why I'm talking of digitization here is because of the strength of the spread of information, both in terms of volume, at the pace which information spreads. Transparency is no longer a choice. It is an imperative. And that's where it takes me back to the mindset. So coming back to your point on actual projects, be it recycling of waste, be it cleaning the rivers and the ponds, be it saving water. By the way, the world's largest water program as we speak is currently being executed in India, where we want to get potable drinking tap to over 600 million Indians in the next 36 months now. Again, launched by the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi. So every element of what is happening in our investment process, and virtually all projects which are taking place where India is concerned, is either bringing down our carbon footprint, is helping bringing gender equality, creating better jobs, better living conditions. You heard, we had both Arun and we had Ajay tell you of the amazing things they're doing even in their building construction. And that is where my startup, so one of the things of India, of Invest India, is that we also manage Startup India. And by the way, Startup India is now, it's number 3 in the world in number of unicorns, number 2 in the world in number of startups, and number 1 in the world in new startups adding every day. And a large part of them are focusing on issues which have a direct impact on ESG. So what I must say is that India, it's not just a new story, it is just that the momentum has now taken off in a very significant manner. Let me bring it back to you, Ricky.
Thank you. I mean, what you're saying is that it's really not just ESG, and perhaps the better way to describe it is to use it with the term around the Sustainable Development Goals, right? There's 17, they're all linked. You can't have climate without gender equality, inequality, health, they all come together. So it sounds like what you're doing is addressing all of those goals, which I find fascinating. You mentioned digitalization, training people. Ajay, I do want to talk a little bit about this issue around data centers. I was having a conversation with a CEO in Ireland the other day who was saying, you know, we can do all we can with getting carbon neutral cars on the roads, that kind of thing, but we have so much power going into data centers. What does Infosys do, and what could you teach the rest of the world in terms of bringing down the carbon emissions there?
So first of all, I think just building on Deepak's point on the mindset piece, I think there's a growing recognition that organizations do not exist in vacuum. I mean, they have a responsibility towards environment, that they take from people, the effect lives are beyond customers they directly serve. So I think there's a hugely, beyond the financial metrics, I think ESG metrics are becoming very, very important. And coming to your question on technology, so our transformation has been largely technology led. So, and we defined 4 building blocks in our technology, and I'll touch upon the data center piece as well. But foremost has been how do we collect data across your core operations and supply chain. And I think that's one of the levers where technology has been very, very effective. How do we manage our internal systems, external systems of clients and suppliers, etc. I think that was one. But coming to your direct question on the technology as a building block for carbon emission, especially data centers, look, we are working with clients in a number of ways. And with rightfully, like you said, data centers are a huge source of emissions, greenhouse emissions. And what we're doing is a measurement, awareness of how much is being produced by which data center, which technologies are they using, legacy technologies, where are they sourcing energy from, for example. And then I think one thing which is becoming very pronounced is cloud technology, okay? Because cloud itself, if you look at the large, hyperscalers like AWS, Google, Microsoft source renewable energy. So one way is we are advising our clients to move to cloud effectively as soon as possible. Then also measuring where do they actually source or drive the workloads. In the case of one of the large automotive companies which moved to cloud, they wanted us to use Scandinavian countries as because inherently there's the electricity is very cheap there, but it's also coming from renewable sources. So where you compute the compute workloads is also becoming important. People are looking at Iceland as an area where they could put the data centers because of climate issues. It's inherently cold as a region. And then the last part is about measurement. Using AI, machine learning to look at the consumption patterns of your data centers. Where are you going to be planting data centers? Where are you going to be putting heavy compute workloads which can consume a lot of energy? I think those are the kind of things which we're doing. But foremost is that we are advising our clients to move to cloud as soon as possible, because all these existing data centers are not most effective from a consumption electricity standpoint and greenhouse emissions perspective. Over to you. If I can build on the question also further, but I thought I'd give you a sense of what we are doing and what we're seeing in the marketplace.
Perfect. Thank you. So, Professor Sharma, you asked yourself almost that question about what you are doing to reduce emissions. I'd love to give you the chance to answer that.
So I think it's quite sort of straightforward at a very simple level. We are one of the largest renewable energy companies in the world, so we are sourcing our electricity increasingly that is renewable, which addresses the Scope 2 emissions. So far as our operational emissions is concerned, what you try to do first is you try to electrify your operations as much as possible. And Adani ports and special economic zones is at the forefront of electrification. Areas where you can't electrify, you start looking at solutions like green hydrogen. Green hydrogen makes a lot of sense for India, and it makes a lot of sense for Adani Group, simply because, as Deepak said, India is on track to be one of the largest renewable energy powerhouses. And the cost of green hydrogen production, 70 to 80% is green hydrogen. And given that India is dependent on oil and natural gas, large amount of foreign exchange goes, and India will be a country that probably will catapult from coal directly to green hydrogen and renewables over the next decades, because there is a driver for it. So you look at those solutions, and we are trying pilot. They are not cost effective right now. And then, of course, you look at circular economy measures, try to reduce emissions and improve the efficiency of your operations. And then if you have residual emissions, then you try to basically find offsets, nature-based solutions, grow mangroves around ports, do afforestation. And we believe that much of the businesses can actually get to a net zero in a significantly reduced period of time if we follow this simple. And this is where innovation becomes extremely important. The group is focused on innovation, and I believe ESG is going to be one of the great sources of entrepreneurial innovation in a country like India. If you look at trillions of dollars will be invested in infrastructure, India can define the standards on what is the innovation standard for materials, building standards, and the entrepreneurs can provide solutions that can and I think that is a great opportunity for India, and I think for Deepak, I think it will be an excellent way for India to become the Silicon Valley infrastructure and energy entrepreneurship, which is powered by digitalization, AI, machine learning, and blockchain. Blockchain is very important because trust is missing. If I have an investment to make and someone comes and says, I have got a green project for you, how do I know that this project actually is green? And this is where a trust ecosystem is fundamental. There is trillions of dollars chasing green investment. There are tons of green projects that require green premium and no one to invest them. So if India can build that trust architecture, then we actually will see a great sort of entrepreneurial drive that will make India the hub of infrastructure linked innovation.
Thank you.
I'll finish that and off to you, Eddie.
So let me come back to you, Wong Young-Fine. You're looking at how you tie your sustainability targets to bond financing terms. So in other words, anchoring your financing strategy together with your business strategy. So tell me how this works in practice and how much innovation is really possible in sustainable green finances.
Well, I think, for a lot of companies, they find it very hard to link their ESG strategy and to try and realize some benefits from it, because, the ESG journey is not a cheap journey. And one of the ways that we have shown to our clients is that if you tie your financing to your ESG goals, and put some strong KPIs around it, you can command quite a lot of leverage, to drive down the coupon rate on your bonds issuance. So this is one way in which we demonstrate to our clients that really going to ESG is not is not going to be a painful exercise for our clients. So that's really something that I think in that process, a lot of our clients have suddenly realized that they can actually fund part of that investments, in ESG goals, through tying up with their financing needs. Over to you, Eddie.
Thank you. So we've got a couple of minutes left. I want to come back and get a brief answer from each of you. If you were to be able to speak directly to the G7 leaders, or those going to COP26, what is the action you want to come out of November that could really make a significant difference? If we start with you, Deepak.
I think a focused execution of already decided milestones is the most critical thing. And like we are working on achieving those milestones within the given times, and we have, and we've surpassed the time limits and achieved more, we would just request each and everyone to do it. And I think with the current situation and the pandemic, everybody realizes the absolute utmost urgency and the necessity to be able to follow those milestones to the T. Back to you.
Ajay, what about you?
Strategies are not working very effectively, okay? So we need to have very strong, stringent measures, first of all, global standards, which everybody can adhere to. And at the moment, I think that is what is missing if I look at ESG standards. And there are, it varies from country to country, jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I think we can bring some semblance of standardization there to be very effective, because, alongside financial measures, now the markets are also measuring companies on ESG measures. So those measures, how do we put them in perspective, is going to be very vital going forward. So that's my take on this, Eddie.
What about you, Professor Arun? What would you say is your message for the action you need to see from global leaders?
I think they have to give confidence to the communities in the developed world whose jobs are going to be affected, and to the communities in the developing world who need to be empowered by the transfer of technology, by the transfer of capital that they have been talking about, and we haven't seen much progress on that. And I think giving confidence to the developed world and to the developed world, we build that consensus that is required if we are to meet the challenge.
Thank you. And what about you, Wong Young-Fine?
Well, I would say to them to take a really bold approach, to reframe the cost perspective, because at the moment I think every nation is just skimming, the surface and not taking really concrete actions, to meet some of those ESG targets. Over to you, Eddie.
Thank you guys very much for keeping us to time. I was going to say it's time for a 7th inning stretch now, but that's too American of a reference. It is time for a chai break and some yoga. We'll be right back.